Welcome back. You're listening to Get Real with Bob and Stacey here on the Money Matters Radio Network. Joining us by phone today for our Leaders and Legends segment, we have Jeffrey Hayzlett, TV host and author of Think Big, Act Bigger. Welcome to the show, Jeffrey.
Hey, it's good to be here. I like being on a show where money matters. That's the most important show there is right there.
It's very true.
So I want to give a little background about Jeffrey. Jeffrey is a primetime television host of C-Suite with Jeffrey Hayzlett and Executive Perspectives on C-Suite TV. He's also a business radio host of All Business with Jeffrey Hayzlett on CBS on-demand radio network Play It. He's a global business celebrity, a speaker, best-selling author, and chairman of C-Suite Network, home of the world's most powerful network of C-Suite leaders. Hayzlett is a well-traveled public speaker and author of 3 best-selling books, The Mirror Test, Running the Gauntlet, and his newest one, Think Big, Act Bigger. Jeffrey, tell us, what does it mean to think big and act bigger?
You know, for so long we've been kind of pushed down and pushed around, and we're not able to do the things. And so so many people say, well, we can't do it for this, we can't do it for that. In fact, in my book, I've got pages and pages of just excuses that people give, like the dog ate my homework almost, or we tried that once before, or it's not in the budget. The best was I can't do it because my cat's on dialysis. I thought that was the best one by far. But but you see all these excuses, and most of the time it's just a story.
Right.
And you can do in business, you can do anything you want to do, given time, money, or expertise, or make a decision. And this is what this is about. It's about being relentless, and that's what you have to be successful. It's not the lucky who win. It's the relentless, and that's what this whole book's about.
Wow, that's awesome. How do you determine your conditions of satisfaction? So what are some questions people should ask themselves before starting any type of business?
Oh, I love conditions of satisfaction. These are promises. Promises, and we do this all the time. You do this with your kids. You promise to take them to Disney World, for instance, and you never break a pinky promise, so why do you break business promises or goals or objectives? So I like to use the word promises. And conditions of satisfaction are mutual conditions of satisfaction is a better way of saying it. Are really those promises that you make yourself. I mean, why am I doing what I want to do? How long do I want to keep going at this business, getting this new startup going, for instance, without a salary, or how long am I going to keep pushing this, or how much crap am I have to take from my boss before I want to get out of here and go find something where they reward me and I want to do it right. So that's what I'm talking about, conditions of satisfaction. You have those kind of things. I do that with my wife because I love to work, and I have to negotiate with her that I'm only going to work till this time, and then we're going to go to the movies, or we're going to do those. And that's what conditions of satisfaction are, setting those real promises in your business and for your own personal life. And it's very important that you have those.
Wow, that's great. So what is critical to create, or why is it critical to create a business identity that you can own, and how can somebody do it?
Well, it's what is it you want to be known for? I mean, when we think of Apple, we kind of know what that stands for. We think of Microsoft, we know what that, or Coca-Cola, the big companies. But even in your little company, what's the cadence of your business? You walk into a business, and I can absolutely tell you the cadence of the business by the way people, the noise that's in there, the way people are walking around, how they dress. And or you watch a television show, you kind of see the cadence, like of all these crime shows, or if you ever used to watch West Wing, you always saw people walking around in the background moving fast. But if you've ever been to the White House, no one moves fast in the White House. It's always slow. And it's definitely quiet in that building too. So, but that's what I'm talking about, is like, what is it you want to be, like? And then go tell that story, be that story, and be who you are. A lot of people refer to businesses as brands. And they shouldn't do that, in my opinion, because a brand is nothing but a promise delivered. And that's what a brand. A brand is also something you put on occasionally a horse and always on a cow. So that's where the word brand came from cowboys like me who used to set our cattle loose. And,
I didn't know that.
Them by putting a brand on them. And that kind of became the logo for the company, and then people start referring to this term as brand. And I think we use it a lot more than we really should. So what's your promise to the customer? And that's what I'm talking about there.
So in your newest book, Think Big, Act Bigger, The Rewards of Being Relentless, in the book you talk about empowering employees to make their own decisions. In fact, Bob and I were just talking about this very subject before we had you on the phone. Talk to us about that and what you call the Caitlin rule.
Oh, I love this. It's the opening statement. So you guys got me wound up now. You put the quarter and you go for the full ride. See? You know? But the Caitlin rule is the first story I tell in the book. I'd hired a young gal, brand new, only been with us for a week or two, and she came over to me because we're about to leave to go and meet with the CEO of a company, and a company that we actually are taking public. We take a couple of companies public every year. And the name of our company that we have is called Tallgrass, and it stands for, if you want to run with the big dogs, you got to learn to pee in the tall grass. And here we are about to leave, and she comes over to me and says, Jeff, should we take color copies of the presentation to the meeting? So I had to turn to her and said, Caitlin, you're new here, so you don't know the rules. And I'm going to name a new rule after you because you're coming here to me asking this question. I said, should we take color copies? Should we have color copies? Would it make us more effective? I said, but more importantly, here's the rule. The rule is you get 21 questions. You can ask me any 21 questions you want to in any time during the month, but you only get 21. You can ask me where the best Italian restaurant is in New York City, the best train to take across town. Does this dress make me look fat? I don't care, anything. But I said, but is that one of your 21 questions? And she turned to me and she was just frightened, and she said, I don't think so. I said, well, good career move, because if I have to answer a question, what the heck do I need you for?
Right.
And that's what I mean by that, because I said to her, Caitlin, I hired you because you're a superstar. You're a big dog, like I said in Tallgrass, big dog. And you're going to have my job one day. You're going to have everybody's job here. That's the kind of person you are. But yeah, here you are, we're about to leave a meeting, and you're asking me a question you should know the answer to. That's not my job. I said, if I have to answer that question, what do I need you for? I don't need you. So that's really what that's about. So it's about saying to the folks, do your job. And if you don't do your job, first of all, always make mistakes, then we're going to die. Could I turn back to her and I said to her, Caitlin, do you have time to make the color copies? And she said, no. I said, then what the heck are you asking me a question like that for? And so it's really about saying to the team, here's the conditions of satisfaction, getting back to what we talked about a few minutes ago.
These are exactly the kind of books I think that there are not enough of. There are so many books on like self-help books, but I don't think there are enough books on how leaders can empower employees. So I love everything you're saying. Let's talk about passion.
If I can jump in, but to me, I'm getting as much feedback from people that this is a self-help book. I mean, I wrote it as a business book,
right.
But I see on Amazon I'm being sold with other self-help books, which is kind of interesting.
Yes.
That it's turned out to that. Yeah, so which is great. I love to see that.
Let's talk about passion. Is it good or bad for business? And if I'm not passionate, can I still succeed in business?
Well, passion alone is not going to carry you. I mean, I used to be the chief marketing officer of Eastman Kodak, and the people at Kodak were passionate about film, and they were passionate about what they do, and they used to come to me and say, Jeff, make it like it used to be. Which is great, but I don't look like I used to when I was 20. I look better today. That's what I like to say. It's about having an attitude that, change is inevitable, so change, adapt, or die. But passion alone, I used to own a pheasant farm for years. I was passionate about pheasants. I love pheasants. And one night I lost 10,000 of them in a thunderstorm because they looked up, opened their beaks, and drowned. I mean, They're the stupidest birds you've ever seen in your life.
Wow.
And but you can't let passion alone carry your business, because if you do, birds die. Stuff happens. So, you've got to take more than just passion. And by the way, passion can, we know that in our love lives. So it's the same thing in business. It can lead you down some bad paths where you don't see the inevitable. You don't see that, the bad side of things. And while it's important because it can carry you through, don't make it the only thing. You've got to be really grounded about, you think it might happen, you believe this, but the market might not be ready for it. And you've got to have, again, those built-in conditions of satisfaction that if I don't move it by this much and I've invested this much, and then I'm going to back out, I'm going to stop, or I'm going to change or alter. You have to have some of those real smart rules, some practical things in place.
All right. I've met you in person, so I don't believe this, but it's been said that you are pig-headed and irrational. You say it doesn't matter when people say stuff about you. In fact, you say it's a good thing for business leaders to be pig-headed. Why?
Well, you got to cause a little tension. I was filming my television show out in San Diego with Greg Lucier, CEO of a company that's a biotech company. It's a publicly traded company in the biotech field.
Mm-hmm.
And, if anybody should be rational, here was a guy who was standing in front of a group of Harvard MBAs, and he said, leaders must be irrational. I thought, oh, man, I've got him. I'm going to go after him after this. I wrote it down. He's got to be crazy. Publicly traded company. He's in the medical field, and he's talking about being irrational. There's no way. They should be logical, straightforward. You're a publicly traded company. And what he said is sometimes as leaders, we want to go from A up over here to point B. But what we have to do sometimes is stretch it even further and tell our people we're going way over to C so we can get to B. And that's what he meant by we got to be a little rational. And have you ever had a boss who said, hey, we're going to stretch it, we're going to do that? Or a coach who said at the end of you running all those laps and you're exhausted and you're laying on the ground about to throw up, you've spent. And then he or she says, run another lap, and you do, and you don't die. There's an irrational. You thought that was the most irrational thought. That's what that's about.
Right.
And it's about pushing and pushing and pushing. That's what we're supposed to do.
Wow. All right. Quick recap, and then I have a few more questions for you. So far, I've been sitting here taking notes the entire time so that I can apply everything to my own business. But we started with stop with the excuses, stop with the stories that we tell ourselves, be relentless. Winning is not for the lucky, it is for the relentless. Figure out your conditions of satisfaction. Create promises that you can live up to. Be your story. So we talked about brand, but really you say just live your story. Don't violate the Caitlin rule. In fact, empower people to make decisions and to do their jobs. We also talked about passion. You said passion alone is not enough because at the end of the day, stupid birds die. And I'll remember that one just like...
That one's going to stick forever.
Yes.
Well, I usually use a whole other word around that, but we're on the radio, and I don't want you to get thrown off. So.
After the show, you'll have to tell us what that one is.
And then...
It's in the book. Yeah.
Then be pig-headed enough to get people to go the extra mile. All right, couple more questions before we wrap up. You say it's imperative for leaders to focus and cut out the noise. What are some tips on focusing on what matters?
I love this one. This one's about killing squirrels. Okay?
Oh, perfect.
I like where we're going with this.
Yeah, it's awesome. Finally, we get to kill something here. That's awesome. So in the movie Up, it's a great example of it. There's a talking dog named Doug who's outfitted with his collar, and he runs up to these older character and a young scout, and he says, "Hi, I'm Doug the talking dog. You seem like a very nice person. My owner has outfitted me with this collar that allows you to hear my innermost thoughts as though I'm speaking." And all of a sudden, he looks away and yells, "Squirrel," because he's a dog. And so, that's just what it's about. So like every single day in our business, we're yelling squirrel all the time.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we have to do is kill those squirrels. You've got to have those objectives of here's the things I'm going to get done today, because these are the things that relate back to my conditions of satisfaction. And if I get these things done, I'm not further ahead, but yet we don't always get to them, and we keep writing those same items down over and over and over again. And so what you got to do is kill some squirrels. And so when they pop up, you got to hammer them down. And you just have to develop that discipline to become focused, because the most effective people, and I've interviewed tons of billionaires. I know billionaires. I know lots of millionaires who made it happen, and even professional athletes that I've met, gold medalists, they are super focused, and they kill squirrels. And that's what you got to do. Wow,
that's awesome. What are some examples of companies that steamrolled their way through obstacles, and how did they do it?
Well, there's so many of them. I'm not going to go into a million of them, but there's just companies who just go and get it done no matter what. They throw impossible obstacles out there, and they just steamroll them, go through them. And most of those companies, the ones that I think are the coolest, are the smaller companies, because big companies have lots of resources. But what I'm doing, what I want people to hear is if you're a small company, you can do it too. You've got to meet that objective, whatever it is. You got to get it done. And, I've had to tell that to my kids and employees sometimes. They said, "Jeff, why are you staying so late?" Well, someone has to make sure it gets done because I'm responsible. So that's what you have to do. You have to sleep on a cot sometimes, whatever, or maybe you bruise a few egos, but you got to get it done. So that's the most important piece.
Tell us what happened or what you learned when you visited the executive team at Domino's when you were filming the C-Suite with Jeffrey Hayzlett.
Oh, that's cool. And I love that. I love this story. I was watching TV, and that's the whole thing about my show is I get to see things, and then I go, why do they do that? And I'm watching TV, and they have this commercial on late at night that says our pizzas suck. It tastes like cardboard. And I'm thinking, who in their right mind puts out a commercial and spends money saying we suck? I couldn't believe it. So I said to them, what happened? They said, that's what our customers were saying. And finally someone raised their hand and said, we suck too, and we should change it. And we decided to change it. And so they changed the brand promise. And that's what I said to him. I said, you changed the brand promise? He goes, no, we didn't. I go, yeah, you did. You care more about getting us the box than what was in the box. Because their slogan was, hey, 30 minutes or
yes.
Free.
Yeah, free. Free, exactly. How many have called us at late at night? We call 11 o'clock. We call Domino's. What's the first thing we do? We hang up. We look at our watch, hoping we'll get a free crappy pizza. I mean, that's what we did, And so they changed it, and they said, look, we see that. And so they retooled it, and then they advertised. They were radically transparent to the customer in saying, we heard you, we see it, we understand, we're going to make some fun of it because we should have realized that too. We got caught up in our own story that we were good, and 30 minutes or free was more important than good. And so they changed it, and the results were they went from like 70 cents a share to $70 a share. They had a pepperoni shortage. I mean, almost ran out of pepperoni. It was so big, and it's made a dramatic change in the company by just telling the truth.
Wow. That's impressive.
So simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing in most things in life. Everybody knows we screw up.
Right.
Customers are okay with that. You lose my bag and so forth, but treat me right and don't lie to me. Right? And give them a fair shake. And most people, I mean, you got great brands like where you guys are at. Dunkin' Donuts, they just do it right. You know what to expect, and it become part of your day and part of your life, and you don't want to. That's a brand who just gets it done, and they've made some mistakes over the year too, like every company has. They tried to get into California for a long time and couldn't, and they failed, and now they're rolling back into across the country.
Wow. Jeffrey, you are amazing. First of all, where should people buy the book?
You can buy it wherever you want to buy a book because that's where we'll be. So whether it's at Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, or online, Amazon, or, hey, we got a brand new book. In fact, I even narrate it on Audible. So if you want to listen to me.
Oh, good.
I yell just like this in the book because I have a lot of fun.
All right, and it is Think Big, Act Bigger with Jeffrey Hayzlett. And also, where can people follow you and watch your show, etc.?
You just go to Hayzlett.com. You'll find me everywhere. But C-Suite TV, C-Suite Radio, CBSPlay.it. You can get the podcast or iTunes on iTunes. Hayzlett, Hayzlett. You're not going to find anybody else in that name.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the show. That's it for this segment of Leaders and Legends and this edition of Get Real with Bob and Stacey. Tune in again next weekend for more.